Hey guys! Welcome back to Joshua's Japan channel, and today finally out in the town and we're interviewing my friend James that actually owns this cafe. Cafe Chairo. Chairo means brown because his surname is Brown, and he's actually from America and he owns a cafe right in the middle of Omotesando, Harajuku area, and he's a very amazing guy, and I thought it would be amazing to interview him of why he decided to have a cafe in Tokyo and the difficulties of owning a cafe in Japan and all that. So let's go inside. Could you please introduce yourself a little bit, your name, where you're from, and all that?
So yeah, my name is James Brown, for better or for worse. I'm from America. I grew up in like a small town in Indiana, so just kind of like dead center in the country. But then for university, I lived in Boston, so that's kind of where I got more exposure to like the city life and everything there. And then from there, I came to Japan for the first time in 2013, grew to love it, and just continued to come back.
Right, so
now here we are.
What made you come to Japan first? Like, what was the initial reason?
Ironically enough, I never had interest in Japan or Asia in general. I think it's just because of Western education, we don't really cover Asia at all.
Not at all. No.
It's like you get 1 week for Asia, they cover like 3 or 4 days for China, 1 day for Japan, 1 day for like this country, and you never really talk about it. But then in university, one of my like best friends, he had an interest in Japanese culture and like art and anime, of course. So through there, I got more exposure, and I also became interested in that. I started watching more, learning more, studying a lot more. And then I kind of just decided, okay, I want to come to Japan, and I did a study abroad my sophomore year.
So the third year?
Second year.
Second year.
So yeah, my second year in university, I did a study abroad, and that's where I got exposed more to the language, started studying that. And yeah, I also went to Kyoto and Nara that year, and then went back to the States, and then had kind of what you call like reverse culture shock. It was just like, oh, I don't belong here. It seems like out of place. Like I felt more at home in Japan. Everything felt more like it just kind of clicked. And from there, yeah, I came back the next year, and the next year, and went back to the States again, and graduated, worked a little bit, and then came back here.
You've been living here permanently since 2018, was it? So after that, how did you get into opening a cafe and all that? So we obviously met at a commercial shoot. So did you first start working in the entertainment industry, or how did it come about?
So for me, when I first came to Japan was when I was kind of exposed more towards like the modeling aspect, where people were interested in me and always like wanted to take photos and would talk to me. I kind of stand out a little bit. Actually, a lot of my experience for work was always tea. Tea, and because I was fascinated with Japanese culture, I worked a lot with Japanese cafes and restaurants. So I was a manager of a Japanese restaurant cafe in Boston.
Wow.
Where I had over 150 seats. This is very large. So 150 seats and like 50 staff.
So
I did that, and then before that one, actually for like 2-3 years, I worked at a tea shop, a Canadian company, and I helped manage like 3 different locations, and like doing all like we had over 150 types of tea, so you got all the tea knowledge, and then that's where all that basics came from. And then for the Japanese restaurant / cafe, it was my first time experiencing opening a cafe. For the other Canadian company, it was I helped open a cafe, but they already had all the systems in place. They already had like their suppliers, and everything was already decided. For this one, it was my first time actually experiencing like that whole thing from the beginning. And that's when I kind of realized like, oh, I actually enjoy like this process, because of when you own your own cafe or restaurant, you get to decide everything. You can change anything anytime. So then as you grow, like there's never a day in which it's the same. So that's an aspect that I've always really enjoyed. Like I always hate when the days that you always do the exact same thing every day. Initial idea was I was going to travel around Asia for a year. At that point, I had quit that managing job and I was doing freelance work. And through that freelance work, I was helping consult, doing like business consulting, but also design work for Japanese cafes and restaurants. Like my last contract I had was with a sushi place in Hong Kong. So doing work like that, so the idea was like, oh, I can work anywhere. So it's obviously cheaper to stay in like an Airbnb or do like capsule hotels, et cetera, in various Asian countries than to do 1 month of rent in Boston.
Right. Yeah.
Plus, if you can travel at the same time, why not?
Yeah,
so that was the idea, but then I kind of at that point forgot how much I missed living in Japan and how much I enjoyed being here. That I'm like, okay, well, I want to kind of make it more permanent here, and how about can I do that? And through that, I kind of discovered this program that's called like a startup visa.
Okay.
So Japan has this, it started 5-6 years ago. And the startup visa, your first visa you receive is only 6 months. And the idea is like, oh, you can open a bank account, find a store, do all of the registrations, et cetera, and that gives you the access to that. And then from there, you can renew your visa for however many years you want. And in that case, you're literally starting a company.
Right.
So I discovered that and then started the application process for that. And then moved to here.
And so you first opened your cafe in Kichijoji, was it? So how was it finding a place to rent? Like dealing with Japanese owners?
A few issues with finding places in Tokyo, just because of obviously the foreign aspect. So we would we worked with a real estate agent, multiple real estate agents at the time, and the real estate agent would call these places, be like, "Oh, is it okay? Can we come see the property?" The owner then would ask like, "Oh, what is the concept, or is it going to be a restaurant, is it going to be a cafe, or what is it going to be?" From there, it was like, oh, and also just to let you know, this person is also a foreigner. And then at that point, it's just like, oh, sorry, no. And then like you would get, we didn't have a lot per se, but you still had a decent amount, like once or a couple times a week, maybe once or twice a day, even you would have it where just be like, they'd be like, no to foreigners.
How did that make you feel? Like, were you let down, or were you just like, oh, c'est la vie, like this is life, this is Japan, I'm a foreigner that's trying to live in Japan, so.
A little bit of both. So like you get the aspect of like, oh, okay, well, I'm not shogunai, like I can't really do anything about it. This is how they have these ideas of how foreigners can be. A lot of times they might not be wrong for
but you're the total opposite of that. Like, you're more Japanese than me, I think.
Sometimes maybe.
Yeah.
But I think the only issue I had with it was more that they don't give you a chance, but they don't at least meet you first.
Yeah, so then they should give you a chance at least.
So at least if they meet the person, or at least hear more about the concept or the ideas, or even like your experience, I think it could go a lot smoother. But when you just hear the word foreigner and then you just like shut it down, it's a little bit like odd. But then there was also, in terms of that aspect of not wanting foreigners, there was also very specific things in like the owners would write on their like those pages for like the real estate agents, and it would specifically say like no curry.
No curry.
So like no cooking for curry. So specifically, essentially saying like no Indian people. Like very specific in terms of what foreigners they wouldn't allow.
Oh, そういうことね。
So then they would also have this kind of issue there, which was more kind of not necessarily a shock, but like so そういうこともあるねみたいな。
Today you finally found the place in Kichijoji, and how did it start out? Like, was it a success from the beginning, or how did it go?
To getting the property, it was a little bit difficult because Japan has a lot of two things that kind of counteract each other. So for example, we got a business loan, but in order for me to get the business loan, I needed the property. But in order for me to get the property, I needed the business loan. Just like, so I'm like, what do you want me to do here? So that was like the first like thing we had to overcome. But then the very beginning, it wasn't bad. So a lot of people were very interested because, oh, it's a new cafe, it's in Kichijoji, so there's obviously a lot of people obviously living there. At the time, there wasn't a lot of new businesses going in at that moment, so there was even more interest. So the first couple months, it was like very just gradual progress. We would have some days where there'd be like no one, but then like the next day you might have like a bunch of people with like full capacity, which was nice. Then Corona hit and there were less people going out, especially for the first wave in like the state of emergency we had, where it's just
from
like
April to June was the hardest, I think. Yeah.
And because of the first one, like everything shut down. Like the only thing that opened was literally like a supermarket.
Yeah.
So no one was going out. I couldn't be open either. So that really hurt the business. And then once things also started to calm down before like the second or third wave, it got better, but it never picked up quite as what it was before. But then also at Kichoju, we were the 3rd and 4th floors, so it was more difficult to see. You get the idea of like most people are just on their phone, so they don't even like see a sign that's like right there.
そうなんだよね. You don't really make the effort to go upstairs.
So
yeah.
So we had some people, like I had some older people that would come up and they'd be like, oh, I can't believe I had to walk up all these stairs. I'm like, I can't just install like an elevator for you. Like, I don't own the building. I'm sorry. So yeah, that made it difficult. And then in the end, I just kind of gradually started looking for the properties, and I managed to find this place. And I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of can't really get much better than here.
You could never get this quality in Harajuku. Like, kominka, location, like, you would never get this.
So, especially going from the 3rd and 4th, which is the 1st floor, is a huge jump.
So what kind of reactions do you get from Japanese customers when they come here?
Almost everyone will be like, oh, おしゃれとか、かわいいとか、こういう感じで。Overall, it's a good reaction we get. Most of our customers are around like 20代ぐらい. Like they either just graduated college or just kind of almost graduating college. So.
My assistant today, Sasha. She's 22.
So exactly. So 22 to like 30-ish is like where most of the people are coming from. Predominantly women. We'll get on the weekends, especially. We'll get a lot of people that are going on like dates. They all loved it. A lot of our dishes are kind of modern in terms of plating, so a lot of people really like that for like Instagram and stuff. So that's helped a lot.
So then it's like a fusion of like traditional Japanese and like modern.
So
Instagrammable.
Exactly.
Like,
so for me, for culture, in order for it to kind of survive, it needs to like adapt or evolve. Because if it doesn't, then there's nothing to kind of connect the current generation with the older culture.
Yeah.
So like a lot of my Japanese sweets and stuff at the cafe are actually from like Kyoto. But then the like moritsuke is like completely different.
It's like your own style almost.
Kind of. I just kind of modernize it so then it has a different. They rethink what the dessert actually is. They can look at it and be like, oh, this can also be like yatsuhashi.
Or what's the day-to-day problems you face owning a cafe as a foreigner, or even not being a foreigner? Or
for me, not too many issues being a foreigner. Actually, being a foreigner owning this kind of cafe in Harajuku is
very unique.
Yeah, it's very unique. It's very beneficial. We get a lot of people, like I'll look at the comments and stuff on Instagram, and people would be like, there was this like イケメンなんか外国人とか店長さんとかこういう感じがあるのでなんかまあ嬉しいけどなんか it's like I'm becoming the mascot of my cafe essentially.
So it helps.
So it helps with like marketing. It helps bring people in. They'll tell like their friends as well and stuff.
外国人がカフェやってるよっていうね。Your 接客してる時なんか日本語できるんだとか言われる? Or do they just expect you to be able to speak Japanese?
Both. I think they expect you to be able to do simple Japanese, but in terms of either speed or actually doing more than just like chumon.
Right, because you're the owner. Right?
So how would you say? When I'm speaking with certain customers, they might ask me like, oh, where are you from? Things like this. And they'll be a little bit more surprised when I can converse more than just like my name to take orders. So you get that aspect. But then there's also, I guess that is also another issue with the business, is my staff are all Japanese. Which is fine, there's no issues with that. But then like some customers will come in and they'll like thank you, they're like, oh, I really enjoyed the food, etc., etc. And instead of like looking at me, they'll specifically look at the Japanese person like, oh, thank you so much. And I'm like, he's my staff, so like I don't know why you're thanking him.
Just with Japanese problem, man. They would never look at you and talk.
It's getting a little bit better now, but in Kichijoju specifically, you would get like, I would have someone that would come for whether it's like a website or wanting to do some kind of interview. They would like, oh, thank you so much for your time, like to my staff. I'm the one that like sets up these meetings, and like if you want something done, you have to talk to me.
本当だよね.
So, or like the weirdest one was like I literally met with the person. We spoke about the business and everything.
Yeah.
And then still he did the same thing and like said thank you to the staff. You met with me.
It's like a very Japanese thing where they feel like they have to thank the Japanese person, and なんか Japanese person you have to show that appreciation and be なんか very humble and all that. But ね、すごいなんか kind of how do you feel about that? Like, does it hurt you, or you're just like
It doesn't hurt me, but it's more just like, I'm just saying, it's not that it's insulting, but like, I'm the one that owns the business. Like, why are you trying to like talk to him?
はい、というわけで今日はジェームズさんにいろいろ聞きましたが Thanks for joining me and thank you for letting me use your cafe, not use, but use だね letting me use your cafe for your interview because I've never done this kind of style interview because I'm always outside and a bit nervous about it was really beautiful so thank you for watching this episode and if you like James or didn't like James do you have any social accounts?
I do. So we have the cafe social, which is just all of them are just Cafe Chido, or you have mine, which is Chido_James.
Chido_James. So if you like James, please follow him. And if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and please leave a comment. And most importantly, please subscribe to my channel. I need more subscribers. So thank you for watching. Bye bye.